We would welcome Ms. Nadia Baye to speak to us, make a very brief presentation on the voice of the youth. Please join me welcome Ms. Nadia Baye.
Good afternoon. Honorable Dr. Agnes Namomolate, Honorable Senator Monica Mutvangwa, Professor Sefa Day, Professor Georgina Ya Ojo, Professor Philip Osei, Professor Candice Moore, Professor Naredi Fasha, Professor Nana Hema Edionum, Professor Njoki, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. I would like to thank Dr. Day-to-me and the leadership of AFLIGA for the invitation. It's truly an honor to address this esteemed gathering on the importance of young women leaders in our continent. In this address, I will highlight 4 things. First, I will provide a brief overview of women's participation in the workforce as it currently stands. Then, I will share some of the progress that has been made by different intercontinental bodies in pushing women leaders forward. Additionally, I'll touch on some of the barriers young women face in their quest to pursue leadership. And finally, I will offer some recommendations, because that is the million-dollar question, right? What do we do to resolve the issue of not having enough women in leadership or in public service? Thank you. So while the health of any society is often measured by socioeconomic indicators, such as access to healthcare, education, and other social services, I believe an equally important yet often overlooked metric is how well a society prepares its young leaders for the future. The African proverb, "It is the young trees that make up the forest," allude to the fact that the undergrowth of younger trees is actually what makes the forest dense. That is what makes the forest the forest. This means that the future and sustainability of nations rests in its youth. Let me give us some more context. 70% of Sub-Saharan Africa's population is actually under the age of 30, making it the youngest region in the world. There's a saying that goes, "Show me your friends and I will show you your character." But for our dialogue today, I say, show me your youth and I will show you your future. Young leaders bring fresh ideas, energy, and dynamism that enrich their communities. We often hear that young people are the future, which is true, and thank you for saying that on our behalf. But young people are also critical to the present. They are part of the workforce, the electorate, and the very social fabric of our nations. So I believe government and policymakers must enact policies not just for the youth, but with the youth. Spaces must intentionally be created for young people to contribute meaningfully and gain the experience they need to lead tomorrow. While countries strive to include more young people in policymaking and leadership, there must be strategic efforts to include young women. The 5th UN Sustainable Development Goal positions gender equality as essential to global development. Africa is home, as I mentioned before, to over 308 million young women and girls, some of whom are seated in our audience today. You all look amazing, my dear sisters. Now imagine with me what our continent would look like if all young women were equipped with the skills needed to serve in their respective fields. Across Sub-Saharan Africa, as you can see in this chart, women form the backbone of the informal sector. The continent actually has the highest informality rates for youth, both men and women alike. Nearly 9 in 10 women in Africa are in informal work, especially in agriculture. Youth aged 15 to 24 are the most affected. As you can see in this graph, and I hope it's legible enough, West, East, and Central African young women face especially high levels of informal employment. Southern Africa has a significant lower rate of 42, and on average, the other regions have about 95, 94, and 95% of women in informal labor. So these are very high rates. We do see the tables turn when it comes to the formal sector, though. According to the Inter-Parliamentary Union, women's representation in Ghana's parliament currently stands at just 16%, well below the global average of 26% and the Sub-Saharan average of 27%. This figure is even lower for young women in parliament. Let me say this. Providing young women with more opportunities in leadership is not a tokenistic endeavor, or it's not meant to be. It's rather an opportunity to maximize a country's productivity and capacity. What we're asking for here is not that women be employed just because they are women, no. What we're asking for is that women be employed because they are competent and they are active agents in our society. In my training as an economist, one of the foundational things I learned about was Adam Smith. By show of hands, how many of us have heard of him before? Adam Smith, okay. How many of us haven't heard of him? Okay, and how many of us don't know if we've heard of him, or we don't remember whether we've heard of him or not? Well, he's widely regarded as the father of economics. And his theory was that countries would reach their highest potential when they utilize the skills and expertise of all available labor. So when we take the example of women's participation in peacemaking, we see that women, when involved in peace processes, increase the likelihood of a peace agreement lasting at least 2 years by 20%. That likelihood then jumps to 35% over 15 years. So what has been done thus far? And may I preface this by saying this list is not exhaustive. There are so many multilateral organizations, national organizations that have done work on this, but in the interest of time, let me just mention a few. Over the past decade, there has been growing dialogue around job creation for young people. The period 2010 to 2020 was marked as the decade for youth. Youth employment also became one of the African Development Bank's top priorities. This momentum was further supported by Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, which lays out Africa's aspirations for the next 50 years. And one of the key cornerstones of that aspiration is reducing youth unemployment. These commitments have inspired several youth employment programs funded either publicly or through international and non-governmental organizations. Evidence, however, shows that women often benefit less from these initiatives than men. So this raises key questions. Why is this the case? What barriers are preventing young women from fully participating in these opportunities? So let me touch on 4 of these barriers very briefly. Studies reveal 4 main barriers that young women face in gaining meaningful employment. The first is social, cultural barriers. Second is economic. Third is conflict-related. And fourth is skills-related. Let me tell you the story of 4 women, each facing a different hurdle in their quest to work. First is Fatima from the northern region of Ghana. She just finished primary school and dreams of becoming an engineer. However, she faces socio-cultural barriers. Upon completing primary school, Fatima is married off to an older man. This early marriage not only hampers her education, but hinders her health due to early childbirth. And because of that, she's not able to work. Let's move all the way to the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia to be precise, where Abeba faces economic barriers in her bid to become an entrepreneur. Accessing finance is a huge challenge. Banks are demanding guarantees that she can rarely provide. This also has implications not just for the management of her finances, but being able to start the business. In northern Nigeria, a young girl called Chineme faces the ravages of conflict and war. These prevent her from continuing her education. Finally, let's go to Pugu, where I recently was in Tanzania, where Imani has a low level of skills development, and she lacks the resources to earn the knowledge she needs in securing suitable employment. So now to the most important part, and what I will conclude with, the recommendations. In my work with the African Union and UN Women, and as well as my own personal research, I have come to find that for more young women to go into higher employment and public service, countries should adopt these 6 strategies, among others. First is sensitization. Second, capacity building. Third, institutionalization and gender mainstreaming. Fourth is equal pay for equal work. Fifth is gender disaggregated data. And sixth is public-private partnerships. Firstly, for countries to grow the critical mass of women leaders, they must invest in sensitizing both men and women, so through mentorship and femtorship. As Dr. Franco Fosu-Appiah, a pastor and leadership expert, aptly puts it, what informs you forms you. This highlights that the information we receive shapes our mindset and behavior. So by intentionally raising awareness about the value and potential of young women in the workplace, countries can begin to dismantle harmful stereotypes and cultural biases. Over time, this shift in perception can create more inclusive environments and set the tone for a national culture that values innovation and growth through the inclusion of its citizens. This sensitization should start early, though. It should start in the classroom, sports, entertainment, and media to highlight that women bring indispensable value to the table. Second key, capacity building. For the next generation of female leaders to truly grow, we must sit at the proverbial feet of those who have gone ahead. Isaac Newton said, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." Organizations like the African Women Leaders Network, which was founded by UN and AU, and the Amujai Initiative by Her Excellency Ellen Johnson Sirleaf are doing just that. They create spaces where seasoned women leaders mentor, guide, and empower the next generation. So it's essentially conferences like these where you have anyone from a head of state, female president, to a young entrepreneur who's just starting out, and they're able to have conversation and dialogue. And I've had the honor and privilege of organizing some of these conferences. I am a testament to the power of mentorship. As a young economics and French university graduate, I had the rare opportunity to work with the AU and UN, and I interned under Madame Diop, who's pictured to my left. She was, at the time, the AU Special Envoy on Women, Peace, and Security. I had never worked in the multilateral space before. I had no clue how to go about it. But she gave me an opportunity. She saw something in me, and here I stand today. We organized numerous international conferences, one of which was in Senegal, where we hosted over 2,000 participants. She trusted me to take the lead on projects and meetings, and since I'm multilingual, she would often ask me to interpret for our Francophone stakeholders in our team meetings. During one such conference, I had the rare opportunity to speak with Her Excellency Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, pictured to the right. I'm not sure if I was more nervous or excited because I was shaking like a leaf. But when we spoke, she encouraged me to continue serving Africa with precision, passion, and purpose. And because a trailblazer took the time to pour into me, I felt I could soar. That is the power of mentorship, and I hope we can all carry that with us today. In Africa, mentorship is woven into the very core of our communities. We often say it takes a village to raise a child, and it's time we brought that same mindset to raising young women leaders deliberately, strategically, and with heart. Thirdly, I believe that by institutionalizing and gender mainstreaming, countries can maximize the value that young women bring to the table. In the Beijing Platform for Action in 1995, 189 countries agreed to actively incorporate gender into policies and programs. Following that, Ghana's very own national gender policy of 2015 has made notable strides in the quest for gender equity as a means to sustainable development. However, some analysts have noted that countries with overall low levels of gender inequality tend to have higher levels of human development, while countries that have higher levels of gender inequality tend to experience the opposite. This means ensuring adequate levels of gender equity in all walks of life will invariably lead to higher human development outcomes. So countries must enforce legislation that targets gender discriminatory practices against women. Fourthly, and I have just 2 more points and I'll be done. But according to the Ghana Statistical Service, among paid workers, women in Ghana earned 34.2% less than men. This is the point on equal pay for equal work. This estimated gender wage gap adjusts for and holds constant age, approximate years of work experience, highest level of education attended, main occupation, among other factors. So ceteris paribus, so they held all these factors constant. Companies must place the same premium on women's labor as on men's labor for the same job. This is not only the fair thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. When women are paid what is commensurate with their labor, it motivates them and gives them more opportunities to become economically self-sufficient. I call on corporate bodies to carry out gender pay gap investigations and to take deliberate steps to fix the wage gap. Fifthly, countries should actively collect gender disaggregated data on young women in the workforce to inform data-driven policies. Robust and targeted policies stem from reliable data, but significant data gaps exist across Africa, impacting various countries and sectors and hindering development. These gaps stem from insufficient data collection, limited access to technology and infrastructure, as well as challenges in data sharing. Addressing these gaps is crucial for informed policy making, effective resource allocation, and achieving sustainable development goals. Finally, countries should strengthen public-private partnerships. The private sector plays a crucial role in expanding the pipeline of women leaders and formal sector laborers by equipping young women with the skills and opportunities needed to thrive. Across Africa, companies and foundations are stepping up to invest in women's economic empowerment. Safaricom in Kenya, MTN, the Tony Elemelu Foundation, Standard Chartered Bank's Future Makers programs, among many others, demonstrate that when the private sector is intentional about inclusion, it can drive large-scale change by preparing young women not only to participate in the formal economy, but to lead within it. So finally, I urge policymakers, governments, corporate leaders, educators, and all stakeholders to rise to the moment and empower this new generation of young women to soar. Across the continent, we've seen young women rise in both the public and private sectors, leading with courage, excellence, and a fresh kind of vision. Their leadership is not just impressive, it's transformative. And yet, there are many more waiting in the wings, ready to lead, ready to serve, and ready to build. We owe it to them and to the generations that will come after to keep this wave moving. So let us be the generation that not only broke barriers, but built bridges. The time is now. Thank you.